Welcome back to A Bit of Curiosity. Again, as always, I'm your host, Jeremy Howlett, and today I've got Mike Massey on. I've known Mike for probably going on 15 years at this point, though we haven't interacted much over the last decade. But while I was building Ultra, he was in the throes of building locally. Mike spent the last number of years of his career implementing software that helps brands sell more online through their offline retail channels, working specifically with local retailers and supporting them by bringing brands, customers, and local retail together with his brand locally.com. So, Mike, welcome. So glad to
Thank
have you
you.
today.
It's great to have you. You're right. It's been a lot of years, man, and it's been kind of last 10 has been head down for us.
You guys have been doing some serious growing. Like I have watched you guys. It's great. So as I just like I'm not really a how I built this podcast, right? Like we might even get
Yeah,
into some deeper conversations outside of locally, whatever, right?
sure.
But kind of walk us through like, when you look at this, and we were talking a little bit offline as before we got here, is when you guys built locally.com, this was way before, like today it's like, okay, I can go to any major retailer and I can check their live inventory and see if a product I want is in stock in store. And I can pick it up. I can buy it and pick it up today, right? But you guys were doing this before that was a feature. Like, where did this idea come from? Why did you feel like this was a place that was able to play in?
So let me do a two-part answer to that. Just if you remember or you don't remember, I was a board member and a marketing director and a chairman of Grassroots Outdoors. We were focused on building marketing programs for to support specialty stores like You'd Mountaineer or Skinny Skis or Travel Country, et cetera. And we were really focused on that. And when I was conceptualizing the idea for locally, Amazon was the gorilla, right? It was like this is going to destroy everybody. And so what we saw in this was just like anybody who looked at Uber at the time and said, well, what we're going to do to try to beat Uber is to whine about it. And that did not work out, right? It was
Yeah.
like, hey, let's take what the best part of this is, which is selection, expediency, service, all these different kind of things. And let's not look at Amazon and say, oh, boo-hoo, these guys are gonna beat us up. Let's go because it's inevitable, right? Consumers are doing this behavior. And so we figured that it's what's most important is to facilitate the discovery of products at local stores. And so that's what we set out to do. And it's been a slog. Um, I was gonna say I forgot what my second part of my answer was, but we'll move on.
That's okay.
I'll remember in
And
a
I
sec.
and I always had a hard time with that, right? Like when I was building Ultra and we'd go into retailers and then they'd find out that we launched on Amazon or on Zappos or what, right? Like and the number one complaint, why would you guys go with those guys? Like now all my customers just come in, they try on the stuff and then they go and buy it off of these platforms. And I get it to some degree, right? But also that's kind of a scarcity mindset. It's like, well, there's not like, and then it's also kind of a cop out to me. It's like, well, do your job, like serve the
Right.
customer and give them unreasonable customer support and service, right? Like hospitality and do it well, and they'll always come back to you
You
because
know what
people.
happened?
Yeah, go
Sorry.
ahead. No, go ahead.
So what happened was that there was this tectonic shift in retail where consumers, who are the main catalyst, moved all of their product research online super rapidly. And I'm sure you remember that before the Amazons and the web and the Alltrex and the backcountries all came into being, we as retailers all sat with like hundreds of different brand catalogs, and consumers would walk in and we'd give them a brand catalog. And that brand catalog concept and the yellow pages, it just got suddenly replaced. And so what we saw was, how do we take what's in stock at local stores and put it where consumers are actually doing their research? There is an online to offline funnel. It's the most important funnel. Virtually everybody does some product research online about products. Anything over $100, they can do product research online before they go into a local store. And so all we did was like connect those things and said, this conversion funnel with the initial engagement that ends in a transaction is going to end somewhere. How do we make sure that when somebody, especially a brand and a retailer, collaborate on that first engagement, that we take them through to a brand purchase at a local store? And that's all we really built.
So I don't know if you have the data on this, but I'd be curious. So brands that have implemented locally.com onto their website, which locally, so to kind of describe for listeners, right? Like locally.com is an engine, it's a marketplace. It sits on a brand site, and then it shows all of the retailers within a certain distance of your delivery area, right? That has the product currently in
Yes,
stock or not.
that's right.
And so my question is like, do you have the data on conversion rate? So if a customer like, what is the conversion rate boost typically for a brand that has locally.com available on the site?
So we just did an A/B test with another running shoe company, and we saw around a 10% boost in this sounds completely strange, right? But we saw about a 10% boost in their e-commerce transaction conversion rate. So the actual rate of somebody buying it and having it shipped went up by
Okay.
10% because of implementing local inventory. I think it just points to, like, the increased trust a consumer has that they're in
Yeah.
the right destination to make the purchase. And then our conversion rate, when we calculate attributable conversion through our platform, where the customer actually does the transaction with the store on the site before they leave the page, and then the conversion rate that happens at the point of sale, we look at those two together, it's in the same range generally as the brand itself. So if a brand is 2 to 3% conversion rate on their site, we're typically seeing 2 to 3%. Brands that have a lot of, sale prices occurring in the online on Google or Amazon or whatever, those brands have lower conversion rates. And brands that are more bespoke type products that consumers are, high intent, or, going to spend a lot of time researching, like bikes, those typically have a higher conversion rate.
Okay. So are you saying that they're typically seeing a 2 to 3% conversion rate, and then yours is another 2 to 3% on top of theirs?
For a different funnel, right? Which their funnel of, like, purely like initial engagement through to transaction is 2 to 3%. For consumers who, like, are doing the initial engagement on the brand site, but then ending up in a local store, we're seeing that conversion funnel occurring at about around a 2 to 3% range too.
So the transaction that's going through the brand site sounds like it's increasing anywhere from 70 to 100%. Or
I
am
would
I
say that probably is right. Yes.
okay? That's awesome. Yeah, that's fantastic. And then as we talked about before, one of the powerful things, and as a marketer, I love this, right? Is when that happens. So a customer that's going to buy from retail is most likely they're probably 100% going to buy from retail regardless, right? Like it's like,
That's
okay,
right.
I know I'm going down to my Salt Lake Running Company or my Runner's Roost or my Fleet Feet or whatever, right? Like
Marathon.
that's where I'm going to go spend my dollars. But I want to figure out which shoe I want before I go in, or I want to look at this pack or whatever, right? Like, so they're going to go do the research. They fall on Hoka's site and they're like, okay, I want the Speedgo. That's the shoe I want. Wait, they have it in stock at my local Runner's Roost?
I'm going there right now.
Fine, I'll place the order right now. They buy it online. It's then available at Runner's Roost for them to pick up. Now, as a marketer, I love that because I supported my local retailer, which gives me lift inside that retailer because like as
Bingo.
those come in, they're happy, they're excited, they're going to bring my product out more often. But also secondarily is I own the customer data now. If a customer just comes and peruses my site and then leaves, doesn't sign up for my email list, they just leave, they go to Runner's Roost, they buy the shoe. Runner's Roost, great, they own the customer data, that's fine. But now I own the customer data and Runner's Roost owns the customer data, and so we can both market to them in
And
different
Runner's Roost
ways.
is super stoked, right? I mean, they're stoked.
Absolutely.
So they're going to
And I'm
carry more
stoked.
product. They're going
Yeah.
to create more initial engagement because the next customer that didn't start on Hoka's site, they started in a Runner's Roost store, walks in, sees more Hoka on the shelf than any other brand, and suddenly that customer buys a pair of shoes, and the next purchase they're making on Hoka, right? So, like, there's this perfect circle of, collaboration that can occur between brand and retailer. It really isn't this concept that consumers are forced to stick in one channel the entire time. It just doesn't really
Yeah.
work.
So, what would you think? Like, I feel like we talk about Amazon, right? Like with the onset of eBay, Amazon, right? Like, and then Walmart.com, like all of these players, right? Like Backcountry.com and Zappos, etc., right? Like it feels like the narrative for the last 15 years has been retail is dead or it's dying, right? Is
It's
that
growing.
yeah, that would be my question, right? Like because it seems like especially in the specialty realm is it is growing.
That's right. It's growing. I mean, and some of those really large e-commerce sites are essentially paved over at this point. They're like, they have not like succeeded in destroying local retail. And no matter what they were willing to burn in customer acquisition costs, it still didn't matter. At the end of the day, consumers are still shopping in local stores. 80% of transactions is what's, forecast is what Google themselves, who's our partner, is forecasting, it to settle in over the next 10 years. Almost every shopper does online research. 90% of shoppers doing online research, 80% of purchases are still happening in local stores. This is the most important channel that people need to optimize for, especially if you want to sell direct. Because if you want to sell direct, but your products aren't being represented at local stores and all those ratios are still in place, well, nobody's going to find you. You can't spend enough money to acquire customers to a brand they've never heard of their site when they walk into a store and see shelves of the competing product. They just become more aware of the competing product. And so our argument has always been let's just make it into a sales channel and not an online channel and an offline channel or a digital channel and a physical channel. Let's just have a sales channel that, fosters each other.
It's the true approach to omni-channel. Like it
It's
is,
not even omni-channel. It's like there is just the shopper. The shopper is the channel.
yeah.
And they might want to buy on Amazon and they might want to go to a local store and they might like make a weird online to offline or offline to online or web rooming or show rooming. They can do all of those things. But if you're the brand, the one thing you got to be sure of is that if you've acquired a customer, either through selling into a local wholesale store or you've acquired them yourself online or through an influencer, you need to keep that shopper in your brand experience until those shoes are on your feet. That's the most important thing you can do.
Yeah. No, absolutely. I love it. It's fascinating to me, like, especially like, so running, outdoor, cycling,
No.
snow, ski, right? Like,
Hmm.
those are some of the biggest independent channels, at least that I'm aware of. And maybe it's because I'm jaded because I've played in that world. I guess jewelry is probably a really big independent
Music,
channel.
that's another one we're really big in. Guitars and stuff.
Okay.
That's dominated by specialty stores that completely drive the narrative with consumers.
But it's amazing to think about how many, just the sheer quantity of specialty stores that exist. Like I'm working with a cycling apparel brand right now. They're just getting going. They're just getting out there. And so I'm pulling some data lists right now for them and I'm just looking at like, okay, like I just want a list of all of the cycling retailers, right?
I bet there's 10,000. If I had
I've
to pull a number off the top of my head, I bet there's 10,000 stores.
I've just hit the major metro areas here in the West, and I haven't even hit them all, right? Like, and I'm probably hit 4 or 5 states so far, and I think my list is over 1,000 right
Yeah.
now. It's
Yeah, I think
like,
there's probably 10,000 stores.
yeah, I
We
think you're
probably
right.
collect we probably collect inventory from 7 or 8 or 9,000 bike stores.
Yeah, it's fascinating, and and I think like the fear has always been that big box is gonna squelch out the little guy, and that Amazon's gonna squelch out the right, like, but it's not. That's not the case. People want expert advice. They want people that are going to pay attention to them. They want unreasonable hospitality from where they buy their products.
That's a great word. I love that concept. Unreasonable hospitality. That's fantastic.
It's a great book. I just finished that book.
Oh, I've never even heard of that. I think that's amazing.
Will Guidara, who was the general manager of 11 Madison Park, which is a restaurant in New York, which his chef was the guy that started Shake Shack. But yeah, he wrote a book. So they went from not even being ranked in the top 50 of restaurants and grew to be the number one restaurant in the world by independent voters. They went from 0 Michelin stars to then getting 1 and then being the fastest to get to 3. They skipped a year. Typically, you can only get a Michelin star a year. But a lot of it, like their quality of food was phenomenal, but a lot of it was around the hospitality. And so when the restaurant association or whatever does this top 50, right? They awarded a hospitality award. and they were the inaugural winners of the hospitality award. And so he writes a book about his experience and like all of this, right? Like, and
I
so
think
that's
that's
why
cool. I like that.
the words fresh in my mind. But but that's the thing is like growing. So as I don't like one of my co-founders, right, Golden Harper, and then my other co-founder Brian Beckstead. But Golden Harper, his parents own a run specialty shop here in Utah, and they've owned it since the mid 80s, right? So I grew up around that shop. I grew up going in there. I've like
Same,
and
me
that
too.
and that was one of the things that always stood out to me. Like Hawk, Golden's dad, was phenomenal at customer service. Like he would sit there, he knew everything about every customer that ever came in. He could greet them by name when they'd walk in the door again, and was super passionate around it, right? Like, but that's what people expected when they walked into his store. And that's why it became a mainstay within the community. And I think and that could be said about so many other retail shops, right? Like Kurt Munson at Playmakers in Lansing, Michigan, right? Like we can we can go down the list, right? Naperville Running Company, right? Like there's so many that we could pull that are like, okay, like we know that those stores were mainstays in their community because of the way that they treat their customers. But you go and you walk into a big box retailer, right? Like that 18, 19-year-old kid, yeah, they might care a little bit, right? But they aren't trained to really go the extra mile to like, okay, and plus there's more people coming in those like, and they don't know who you are. They don't know what's going right. Like they're not as attentive, but the local specialty shops are. And that's what makes them so special. And it's such a like it's why it's one of the things why I think it continues to grow year after year, and that they
I
have
agree
not
with
been
all of that.
squelched out.
I think that the thing that local stores like lose track of like what their role is in the ecosystem, right? These are craft retailers that sell products, and put it on people's feet. I mean, that's a fantastic thing.
For the first couple of years when you guys were building locally, you were out there hustling, you're building this software, you're out there trying to acquire users, right? As far as get retailers. Your first 2 years, each year you only onboarded four. So a total of eight over the
Yeah.
course of those 2 years.
Yes.
How hard was that?
Man, I can't even tell you, like, we had six investors or six partners, and all were retailers, and a few more reps that like invested in the company to start the company out. And we only got four retailers, and so we only got two-thirds of our own investors to like, share inventory with us in the first year. And even after that, only the next year we only got like four more. So I really felt like every night going to bed, I was like, this has failed, nobody wants this, like, like doom and gloom, blah blah blah. And really, then we had 100, and then we had REI, and then we had, Fleet Feet or whoever, and suddenly it started to build and compound upon itself to where now the biggest retailers in the world are coming and saying, "Oh, we want this too. We want referrals, Best Buy, we want referrals, Walmart or, Home Depot or Lowe's or whatever, Tractor Supply. We're meeting with JD in a few weeks. Like this is a thing. And I remember what I was going to tell you a little while ago. The difference between Dick's having their inventory and you being able to see what's at an REI or see what's at Best Buy. I mean, that's a great experience, but the problem is the problem is solving, right? Do you want to visit 15 different restaurant websites and check reservations for tables at each one of those? Or do you want to do the Amazon model where it's multi-seller environment where you can see on a product basis who has this? I can scan Target, Best Buy, Walmart, mom and pop, every store. You can see Fleet Feet shoes, you can see Paragon, you can see all of them all at once. We think that's a much better model. It's not really that fun to like go try to find a movie by 13 theaters websites to like figure out who's got the movie and what time and what seats are available and blah blah blah. Whereas, you're used to going to Google and just going, oh, well, show me all, or Flickster or whatever, and show me everything at once.
So are you guys a marketplace then? Does locally have a marketplace? Like, because I know, like, if I go to a brand site, I can see the local retailers that have that product in stock. But what if I'm not sure which brand I want, but I want to shop and see, okay, what local retailers might have a pair of running shorts, right? I don't know exactly which brand I want, but I want to shop around and kind of see. Do you currently have a marketplace where people can go shop that way?
Sure. Locally.com, which we haven't invested a tremendous amount of effort into over the last few years, but 5 years ago we were investing a lot. We've really pivoted more to like the brand tools so that brands themselves could be multi-seller marketplaces.
Sure.
Okay. But we're going back now and like rebuilding locally.com. We're improving a lot of the search functionality, the on-page functionality, et cetera, where yes, you can shop for running shoes in a size, in an area, even in a color, and find the things that you're looking for in an environment where you're seeing omni-seller, omni-brand, omni-channel all in one place.
Okay. No, that's great, and it all supports the local retailer at the end of the day because that's where you're getting it
And
from.
look, there is a enormous vested interest in the tech industry. I mean, the tech industry runs on advertising. All the big guys, like if you're in the tech industry and you're a big guy, you run on advertising. Okay, that's the golden goose. This is 80% of retail and represents virtually none of the digital marketing spend. So this is a space where you can expect marketplace after marketplace to be, exploding over the next few years. I know that like Google, for instance, is very fixated on growing online to offline advertising. Apple's going to enter the online to offline advertising space, is the rumor that we hear. Meta is certainly no stranger to that space. So we would expect lots of environment or lots of players in the environment to like start participating in exactly what we do. We expect to just be the conduit that gets people to where they need to be. So we don't care. I mean, if somebody's on Meta or Instagram or Facebook or whatever, and they're looking at Brooks running shoes, and we can show them that their favorite shoe is nearby at a store, that's an awesome experience,
Absolutely.
right? I mean,
Yeah.
why would they not want to do that?
No, it's as we've already mentioned, right? Like, it's a great brand experience, it's a great retail experience, and it's a great customer experience. And
Exactly.
it's a true win-win-win. And that's what I've loved about your software ever since the first time I remember seeing it, right? And yeah, I think like it was revolutionary then, and I think it's still revolutionary today. It's providing this support because like a lot of time, like so often, brick and mortar, especially small mom and pop brick and mortar, gets left in the dust.
Yes, and let me just add before you go on, let
Yeah,
me just say a personal thing because I was a super early e-commerce merchant. We grew to be a really big merchant, my own retail stores in New Orleans. And and what I realized over the arc of that, maybe 10 to 15 years, is that you're really not going to succeed in online retail. I mean, it's a tough lesson to learn, but specialty local retailers with a, regional presence are not going to be able to compete with Amazon or Backcountry or REI or who Home Depot. It's just almost like a fool's errand. The people who make money in in those industries are the people who sell the tools, not the people who do the retail. It's like the gold rush. Probably make more money selling stagecoaches, pickaxes, and dynamite than you're going to make actually, getting gold out of the mountain. And that's what we saw is that let's develop tools that help local retailers be better at local retail, not try to make every one of them into a moose jaw, into a backcountry.com or an all track or whatever. Said, and I saw so many retailers who wanted to spend $250,000 building out like these elaborate websites that like we're going to, somehow be, huge players in the e-commerce space, and it just didn't work out.
yeah. No, it especially then it was a super hefty investment. Today, thankfully,
It is.
it's
Well,
not
it's a
as
little bit
big of an
less.
investment,
Yeah,
but
right.
it's still a decent investment. No, it's yeah. I think then that's one of the ththings like if you want a nice lifestyle business, go start a brick and mortar mom and pop shop. If you want to become a billionaire, then you got to rethink something else.
Yeah, that's right.
There's
That's
not a
right.
lot of there's not a lot of Sam Waltons out there that are going to take their corner five and dime store and make it a global
You're
powerhouse
right.
like Walmart.
It's tough.
But so okay, let's go back to those first 2 years. What kept you going? Like what? Like you are it. You can't even get all of your partners on board.
Exactly. Exactly. We're struggling.
What keeps you
We're trying.
going?
Oh man, because we believed in it, and it was just like yeah, it was just two of us, three of us, at one point, and I mean we're calling retailers and we're getting like the backwoods on, and we're getting regionally important but relatively small retailers on, and there was this like there was these like periods where we would get two retailers a month on, and then we would get REI on. And it would be like, gas in the tank. It'd be like, let's go do this. And when that would happen, we would also get a few new brands on, and they say, oh, that's what exactly one we're waiting on. I can't tell you how many people have told me all they're waiting for from us is to get Nordstrom on. And then we go get Nordstrom on, and they're like, oh, well, we really want these other guys on. So it never ends, right? The other thing I tell you all the time is that the hardest thing for us was really the first eight retailers we got on the platform. It was like next to impossible to get those first eight on. And, today we might get, a couple hundred, but those first eight were just impossibly difficult to get on.
I don't know, lining up our own retailers, right? Like with my experience with Ultra, right? Like those first few orders, right? First few
Yeah,
commits are always the hardest, right?
that's right.
So Darren Hardy wrote a book called The Compound Effect, and in that book he compared, right, like he gives the penny challenge. I don't know if you've heard this penny challenge, but I could.
No.
He says, would you rather take? And I'm gonna botch these numbers because I don't have it right in front of me. But essentially, would you rather take $3 million today, or would you rather take a penny doubled every day for the next 31 days? And what would be your answer, Mike?
I already know the answer to this, so I guess I do know the penny challenge because I definitely would take that penny and
Yeah,
double it every day. I don't know what it is. I don't know what the ultimate number is, but I
but
do know
if
the power of that.
but yeah, and if you take the penny doubled every day, right? Within a week, you have like 50 cents, if even that much, right? Like, and then after like 3 weeks, I think it's like 9 grand or 10 grand or something like that, right? Like it's still nominal compared to your $3 million, right? But day 29, it's $2.5 million, I think is what it is. And then day 30, it's 5 million. And then day 31, it's 10 million. Over 3x your $3 million, right? If
Yes.
you'd have just waited 31 days, right? Like, and that's the power of the compound effect, right? Is and
Hmm.
that's what you saw, right? Like is like, okay, the first 8 were so hard, but you learned so much. You figured out like, okay, what are the hurdles? What are the things that we're not doing? How do we shift our pitch? Like what are we doing right? Plus you're also filling the funnel with all of those others. You've had all these conversations, you're developing these relationships, right? Like all of these other components are coming into play. And so then the second year, you said 100, or the third year, sorry, the third year was 100.
Yeah, the third year we would be up to like maybe as much as 100 people per month joining the platform. And we just saw the other day that like last year in January,
After
I
eight,
read
oh,
some
after 8 over the first year, then you're 100 a month.
a month, right? We
That's
got up to 100 a month.
phenomenal, right? Like that's
Oh yeah,
awesome.
it was great. But the other day I saw we were looking at some material. We had just gone to the music show in Anaheim, and we looked at last year's numbers and said that we had 21,000 stores on um, in January of last year, and we were making the same deck for this year's show, and we had to change the number from 21,000 to 55,000. And that's what you're saying, right? That's the penny
Yeah,
effect. That's
absolutely.
exactly it. Is that now we're getting to a spot where we're pushing into all these major retailers all around the world where we can have these 1,000 and 2,000 and 3,000 new retailer months, but we realize that like we're just going to get to a point where there's diminishing returns. Still, we've got like 80 to 90% of the running specialty business and 80 to 90% of the outdoor and the snow and the cycling businesses. And that's really where everybody's excited is the specialty part of it and what other specialty segments we can pursue.
Yeah, fantastic. Okay, so you're coming from a background of owning your own specialty shop.
Yes, third generation.
It's a third generation specialty shop owner. Did you have a tech background?
I did not. I literally bootstrapped my own stores to be alongside of Mountain Gear and be the first one, either the first or the second seller on Amazon. right? So like I figured it all out, getting my point of sale system connected directly to Amazon's stuff. And then we shared some technology just coincidentally with Moose Jaw. And so, we developed some interesting technology in my retail business that really got recycled into what locally has become. And then I was also involved in OIA's B2B standard. So I kind of understood how all the data got exchanged. And I spent 2 or 3 years knocking on technologists' doors, looking for somebody who would be my partner in this concept for where to buy things nearby.
That's awesome. So no tech background, but you get in and you just get gritty and figure out how to do Amazon, which then was probably a lot more complicated than it is today. And because it's frankly, it's fairly, I don't know. I personally think it's pretty easy to get
Yeah,
on
because there's all
Amazon.
the systems
Like
now.
it's,
Back then, it was like
yeah,
I had to bounce from one spreadsheet to another to get it into the format that like Amazon needed.
yeah. And so now it's pretty easy, right? Like they
I
have
think
all
so.
that systematized, right? Like anybody can really sell on Amazon. We can get listed on Amazon. Let's put it that way. It's harder to sell
Right.
on Amazon.
To be good at it.
So you do that, and then you're also doing these other things, right? Like with OIA, et cetera, which is giving you some experience and some exposure to other elements that it's like, okay, I see how that needs to fit. I see how that needs to be. And so I guess taking from that, right, my advice to anybody listening is don't be afraid to diversify your efforts intelligently, right? So that you can learn other components that you will need for something in the future, right? And then you take that, and then it's like, okay, now I at least know the questions that I need to ask going finding a technologist, right? With going finding a developer,
I wish it
etc.
was that easy. I did not even know the questions.
That's fair.
I didn't know what questions to ask. I definitely was not at a level of like, oh, we're gonna use SQL or we're gonna use like Postgres. I wasn't even asking any of that kind of stuff. I guess I was in the phase of you know, my questions were not even wrong.
There
They
you
just
go.
didn't even make sense. But look, whatever. I knew what the retail side, I knew what had to happen. It felt like I had a lot of traction among brands and retailers, and then it was just about like kind of getting the pieces to fit together. That was a hard part.
It at least gave you an idea of what the puzzle needed to look like, right?
Exactly.
Like it's like, okay, here's the box of the puzzle, but now I need you to help me find the pieces so we could build this.
That's it. And we had to solve a lot of like data, not technology, but data specific problems early because, as you can imagine, having 55,000 stores with, 500 to 1,000 different brands and, like having to put all those pieces together and locations
Well, and
and
everybody's on
GPS
different
coordinates.
systems.
Everybody's on different systems. It's like a perpetual herding cats. And we had to build
Yeah.
all the things that like harmonize that, make it coherent so a shopper can shop. Like we were talking about, like with Open Table, you could have 65 different reservation systems with each different local restaurant's website having one of those, and you would have to download 65 different apps to be able to go through all the restaurants, and we're coming in and going, no, nobody's going to want that. We want to have one system that has all the local restaurants, that has like every table, and it's like you can just get used to it. And so that's really what we set out to build, was like a harmonizing system.
So you've mentioned Open Table a couple of times. Was Open Table an early inspiration for when you were building this?
Man, Open Table will always be an early inspiration because of the way Open Table started. Open Table's initial concept was what Open Table is today, right? Open Table started in San Francisco with the idea of a single place where you would go to book a table. And what it evolved into was a bunch of tools that restaurants could use on their own site to book reservations. So they basically gave up on the marketplace concept. They became a tool provider for restaurants, and then you had hundreds and then thousands and then tens of thousands of restaurants who use their tools to power reservations. And then OpenTable could come back and rebuild their original concept for a marketplace. So they took a very circuitous route, and it's very inspirational to me to see somebody who pivoted like we pivoted. We thought initially like people just want a marketplace, a Yelp type environment where you could look for a product and would instantly take you to where to buy it. Well, that was very tough because you don't have a coherent concept at the very beginning. You either got to launch a whole big Amazon because there already is an Amazon, or you need to like, do incremental tools that are used by Google or used by Meta or used by Patagonia or used by Ultra, and then take all of those retailers and roll them back up.
Yeah, I think like building a marketplace, I don't know if people realize how difficult that is, right?
It's unreal.
Because now building a marketplace, you're trying to acquire three different customers essentially, right? Like you need to bring the retailers on, right? Like now you got to get the
Hmm.
brands to list their product or at least let you aggregate their product on or whatever, right? And then and then the most important is you got to have customers that come and buy, right? Like Amazon started by being an online bookseller, and that's how they were able to acquire customers because there was nobody else, right? Like it was, and eBay's shifted, right? But they were the bidding platform, right? Like, and that's what they were. But building a marketplace is really hard. Shopify now has a phenomenal marketplace, but they didn't roll out of the gates. They didn't have a marketplace until really the last few years, and now they have their shop app and they like all of it, right? Like now I can go and shop their marketplace. But like locally, right? Like you'd have, especially today, like that's an expensive spend to acquire the end customer. Because it's one thing to go call on brands, it's another thing to go call on retailers and get them all onboarded, right? But to acquire the customer to make a transaction within your platform, A, there's a trust issue, right? Like, and then B is and now there's a spend issue, right? Like I got to go spend to acquire customers to my marketplace instead of
Bingo.
just letting the brand spend to acquire the customer to my app, the build on their website, right? So, yeah, a marketplace is not an easy task by
It's
any stretch.
crazy. And so think about it though. So like you talked about Amazon. Amazon just really was a single seller, single channel solution. They sold books online, right? That was it. Okay. Then they became a multi taxonomy or multi category, then ultimately a multi seller. Then they became kind of a multi channel solution. You've got to solve for all of those things, right? So if you're Patagonia, for instance, and you want to sell your own brand, but you want to enable all of your dealers to sell on your site, you become a marketplace rather than a single seller. Then you have to like enable for multi-channel. So you want to enable the shopper to do pickup or have Evo ship the product or whatever. So now you're a marketplace. And then finally, do you want to carry other brands? Do you want to offer Smith helmets or goggles or Black Diamond climbing gear alongside of the appropriate clothing? These are all questions I think that we're going to see a lot more people trying to solve. I think that like my argument would be, and I did a presentation at ISPO with Owen from Moose Jaw about this exact concept. My idea and Owen's idea, all of our idea is brands will ultimately become the definitive marketplace for their products. They won't just be single seller sites that you go to. A Nike will not be just a place where you go to buy Nike. There might be a place that you go to buy Nike across multiple channels from different retailers because Nike's has it's so easy for them to acquire it, but they're only converting maybe let's say 5% of people to their site. 95% of people are going to continue on to like another place to look and shop. Whereas Amazon converts 45% of people who visit their site because they've got all the sellers, all the brands, all the products, all the channels, all represented in one roof.
That's a very interesting direction for a brand to go, right?
Well, I just did it with Trek.
Landscape.
We launched this exact concept with Trek, and it was really their idea. I give them full credit. They wanted to make it so that when a customer goes to their site, they can choose e-commerce, local pickup, local delivery, whichever seller they want, blended carts. You can buy from Trek a helmet and a bike from a local store. You can the transaction settles across multi-merchant. I think that's the future. I think that
No,
like
I
in the
think, but
future,
right, like I think it's fascinating, right, to
I think
that
it's
point,
fascinating. I think it's
because
amazing.
now, because now as a consumer, right, like because if I'm buying a bike, right, okay, I'm on Trek's site, it's like okay, I just bought a bike, but Trek doesn't sell, they don't sell bike shorts. Well, they probably do, but they don't sell whatever, right? Like whatever, like because now I need bike shorts, I need gloves, I need a helmet, I need a pump, I need a multi-tool. I need a bike rack. I need a quad rack, right? Like I need all of these other things, and I'm ready to drop the thousands of dollars because I'm dropping 5 grand on 10 grand on this new bike, right? Like, yeah, let me drop another $800 on a Kuat rack. Let me drop another $150 on my cycling
You can just,
kit. Let me
that's it.
like, but like, let me put that all in one cart and pick it all up from my local retailer. And I originated from Trek's site, but now I've got a Trek bike, I've got a Euro helmet, I've got Scott sunglasses, and I've got right like
Saris
Kuat
rack or
rack
whatever.
and whatever. Yeah,
Yeah,
like
Kuat. Yeah,
and
exactly.
now it's
That's a
all
great
there
experience.
waiting at the retailer, and I just roll up with my truck and put the rack on. The employee helps me. He's like, "Oh yeah, here, let's get your
I think that,
Trek,
I think,
let's get your bike fitted. Let's get this rack on. Here's your bag of stuff, and I'm ready to go. Like, let's go hit the road because I'm all kitted out."
I think that that's where we're going. I think that like we will get to a spot where the consumer directs the shopping experience to the nth degree. There will not be a no part of the equation ever. You want to buy three things, and one comes from Dick's, and one comes from my local store, and one comes from, Patagonia, then you should be able to do that. And it should be able to be like one is shipped and one is a pickup and one is Uber delivered it. We're just going to get to a spot where, your brand equity is what drives your traffic, but the consumer is what dictates how the whole sales process works.
Okay, so you just threw a little wrinkle in there. I'm curious. Do you guys have built into your platform yet DoorDash and Uber
We do. We
delivery?
have Uber built in.
So instead of saying I want to pick it up from the local store, I
You can have
say
it delivered.
I want this local store to deliver it with Uber. I want
We do.
Uber to
We
pick it
have
up
that.
from there. Okay. All right.
My own stores do 50% of their transactions are for delivery. Consumers love it.
Yeah, no, they do. It is a very interesting way to go, right? But but there's still this like feel good that I'm supporting local and I'm buying from my local retailer, right? Like
There is.
and I'm getting it same day because Uber's bringing it to me that day. And so it's last mile delivery. I don't have to wait the 2-3 days, right?
The only caveat is that we are not funded by Wall Street and giant hedge funds, so we don't give away free local delivery. We've got to actually charge the Uber whatever they
Sure.
charge, and sometimes it's $7 and sometimes it's more. We actually have to charge that, so it's not like Prime where you can get it for free because we can't afford to lose billions of dollars. Kind of holding our breath until we do an IPO. We've got to that. I don't think those days exist anymore. But I do think that like if the consumer wants delivery or the consumer wants pickup or the consumer wants installation or the consumer wants assembly, that blended experience is what we should tell the consumer. No, that doesn't work. We only allow you to get your products from this site shipped to your apartment door. That's a really lousy experience for the shopper. They want to say, this is how I want to get this product.
Interesting. So Trek's doing it.
Trek is doing it.
What other brands do you see as kind of the first early adopters of
Look, I'm
doing
going to tell you
this?
that Patagonia is all in, and you and I talked about this before we got on the chat. Patagonia is all in on the concept that the consumer really guides how they make their purchase, that they trust the consumer to guide how they make their purchase. Building a marketplace is a technological big lift, kind of along the lines of like me getting my little store on Amazon. For them, probably not that big of a lift. But I think in the long term, it'll take a little while. But I think brands like Patagonia will ultimately get to a spot where they don't care if somebody buys from Patagonia.com, a Patagonia store, a Patagonia dealer, a Patagonia online merchant. They don't really care about that. What they really care about is that the consumer is very satisfied with their purchase and is able to get it the way that they want it that time. They trust
Yeah.
that the consumer will come back more and more frequently. And the other thing you and I talked about is direct to consumer as a sales channel. The gross margins look so attractive. But when you start adding in all the retailer costs that you're replacing and the returns and the marketing fees and the internal staff and the technology spend, et cetera, the net margins don't really look the same. And I've sat in on a lot of company, sales meetings and listened to the CFO talk financials and talk about how for most companies, wholesale is what makes all the money.
Yeah. Yeah, and I like it's I've had this conversation with several direct to consumer driven businesses, right? As like, okay, like D2C was nice through about 2019. Because you could go on Facebook, you could spend $1 and
Get five, get
you
10,
could
get
get
whatever.
$5, $10, right? Absolutely. And
Hmm. AdWords.
you were printing money at that point. Well, and I just had a conversation before we got on this with a friend of mine. We sat down to lunch today and we were talking about it, and he's like, "Yeah, you know what? Like United is jumping, like they've jumped into the Facebook game, right? Like you've got these big major brands that they don't care about blended ROAS. They don't care about 1 to 3 or 1 to 4. Like they just want to see, okay, can I get this traffic metric, right? Can I see it go from 1 to 1.2 or 1.3, right? Like they're looking for incremental changes. And so what that does is that pours a lot of money into those platforms. And we've been seeing that happen since 2020. And then it squelches out a lot of these smaller up and comers, right? So it becomes more challenging. And so then your blended ROAS drops drastically. And so then you start looking at, okay, if I'm getting a 1 to 3 or a 1 to 2, right? Like if my cost of acquisition for $100 pair of shoes is $50, then like my after my cost of goods, after my shipping cost, factoring in my 10 to 12% returns, like I'm losing money.
Well, and listen, you should see flashing red lights at that point if you've got to spend $50 to get a $100 sale. I mean, something's wrong, right?
For
And
sure.
what we say all the time is that the best way to get almost practically free traffic to come to your site is to have a very robust local market share. Okay. If your products are sold in everybody's favorite local specialty stores and people see them when they go to the mall or they see them on their favorite stores' Facebook feeds or their Instagram feeds, you're gonna receive free internal unique traffic that you would not be getting even if you were spending an almost unlimited amount of money. If you're getting a 2 to 1 ROAS, something else in another channel is going wrong.
For
Okay.
sure. Yeah.
I mean, you have to have more brand affinity in order to experience a 6 or 7 or 8 to 1 ROAS, right? I mean, it's just what
Yeah.
the reality is. And look, I was there. It cost $1 to get $100 sale on Google. I mean, in the early 2000s, it cost
Yeah.
virtually nothing.
Yeah. And no, those days are kind of behind us.
But they're going even further behind us because of what we talked about before, which is the California gold rush. Okay. People are willing to spend more and more and more and more on the gear, but they're not actually digging up any more gold. They're digging up less. They get there and all the channels are roped off. All the mines are like got, markers on them. And you're now fighting over such a small sliver of what's left online. I'm sorry, Amazon alone is like 53% of all online sales at this point in the US. You're fighting over a teeny amount, and people are spending an unlimited amount of money for that. Whereas this other online to offline channel is really just kind of flourishing.
Well, and that's where I think, again, right? Like we go back to local retailers, right? Like I just thinking about where I live right now. There's a local running store about 10, 15 minutes east of my house, but there's probably 120,000 people that live west of my house. And there is no local running store out there. I have had the idea of opening one out there, and I don't think it'll happen. But they're not being served by a local running store, right? Like they either have to drive to this one or they drive down to the one that's another 20 minutes south or the other one that's another 30-ish minutes north. And but there's an opportunity, right? Like
It
there
is.
may and that's not a sliver. Like you could build a $1.5 million revenue running store just west of my house.
Just get the spot, get the inventory, and you're going to do $1.5 million.
Absolutely. But if I go launch a website, it's going to take me a lot of spending, a lot of stuff to bring in $1.5 million in revenue and trying to etch out a piece in that market, especially
I
as a
agree.
retailer, as a retail.com marketplace, right? Whereas I can go open a local specialty shop And if I think about anything south of where Runner's Corner is, there is there is probably a 500,000 people south of that store, and I don't think that there's a running store down there at all. And that's a like yeah, so local retail still has a
Isn't it
very good
weird?
place.
Isn't it
Like,
weird how it's flipped? Right? It's like 5 or 10 years ago, all the advice was that like online would completely displace physical and all the opportunities for retail were going to be online and physical retail was essentially going to die. And now what we're talking about is like the biggest opportunity is physical retail.
yeah,
Okay, like opening that store in that market is an enormous opportunity to do $1.5 million, probably make full margin, have a loyal customer base, and have great like access to product. You're probably in that market, 120,000 shoppers, probably get any brand you want to sell. Okay, whereas becoming an online seller, you're competing against all your own brands
yep,
to ship the same
exactly.
package to the same shoppers
Yeah.
versus like having people walk in your store and get to know them.
Well, and
I think
especially
it's
with
I think it's weird.
yeah, well, and especially with tools like locally, right? Like if I go open a new store just west of here, you know what? Is anybody that is shopping on Hoka, Ultra, Saucony, Brooks, right? Like, and they're like, oh, there's a new local running store that has this product right here. Great. Ship it to store. That's 5 minutes from my house. Now they come in and it's like, okay, glad you're here. This is awesome. Your
Yeah.
employees are rad. I'm going to be back, right? Like,
Yep.
and
Percent.
so not only like is the opportunity there, but you guys are making that opportunity even better by having me directly connected. Like my inventory is now directly connected to those brands and I can be found that way in addition to just people driving by or sending out mailers or whatever saying, "Hey, we're open now. We're here in the neighborhood."
That's it. That's
Fantastic.
exactly the way it
Okay.
works.
Well, now you got me thinking about my next business idea here, but okay. Do I go open a local running store? We'll see. So, okay, as we wrap, like there's so like we could keep going on this, but I want to be cognizant of your time and of our listeners' time. I just want to run through some rapid fire questions as we close here, Mike.
Okay, great.
So, feel free to answer these however you wish. But how would you say you respond to failure? We talked a little bit about those first couple of years, but like how do you respond to failure?
Man, I would love to say that like, like that I just plow right through or some type of anecdotal thing, but like, man, I typically respond to failure by like staying up all night and like, running through every aspect of like, what went wrong. But then I find myself at 9 o'clock in the morning, like trying to, with all of that information, like reapproaching the problem and seeing what I can fix. I wish that, I was the guy who, the Elon Musk or whoever it is that like, have ice water running through my veins. But that's not,
That's okay. I think you're a little more human than some of
I'm
those
just being
superhuman
honest.
individuals. Like, no, that's great. Awesome. What would you consider is one of your greatest accomplishments? It doesn't have to be with locally, but it could be locally. But
I mean,
what is one of
locally
your
is one of my biggest, my kids, obviously, I'm not gonna like, like they're both great kids. You know, traveling and getting to experience lots of places in the world, that's another one that's really been very important to me and my family. My own small local specialty store brought me a tremendous amount of happiness in my life. We grew it from mom and pop store with, one location to five, and it's back down to three. But I love walking in that store and those stores and just kind of like, enjoying being a specialty retailer.
do you miss it day to day?
No.
Okay. Maybe
Retail's
that'll
hard,
flip
man.
my idea of what I want.
Yeah, retail is hard. And listen, I did it since I was like 7 years old, until I started locally in so, there's not time where I'm like, oh, I wish I was doing more, checking out at the register. Unfortunately, that's just not the case. I love like dealing with the customers, and I do miss some of the personal relationships that I built over the years. But there was a lot of
For
like
sure.
standing around looking at my feet.
Those afternoon hours when
Yeah,
everybody's at work.
exactly. Exactly.
Okay, so you mentioned travel. Like one of your greatest accomplishments is travel. What is your favorite place you've traveled in the past and why?
Vietnam, I've been to Vietnam. I really enjoyed
Mm,
traveling there. It's super unique. We went to the places where the Vietnam War was fought in the middle of the country, and that was really cool to do with two older teenagers. I went to Buenos Aires a couple of years ago and got to go skiing in July in Bariloche near Patagonia. That was an insanely great trip. And then I went surfing in Bali this last year, and that was another one that was really great. Keep going, but
You're a
those are
kid from
my
the
probably my
bayou.
highlights.
How do you know how to ski?
Exactly. 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 Exactly.
So, well, when you're out here, let's go skiing. So let's hit those Utah mountains.
I'd
We'll
love to
take you on
do it,
some Utah
man.
powder.
I'd love to do it.
Vietnam, huh? So my wife and I are going to Malaysia in August. I'm
Hmm.
super excited for that trip.
Have you
Is
been to Southeast Asia?
I have not. So
Okay.
this is the first go over there. Is it worth going over to Vietnam then and taking a couple days to go over there?
Okay, so I don't think that I would go back to Hanoi.
Okay.
Hanoi is an insanely hot, crazy, like frenetic traffic, just bonkers place. But it's also near Ha Long Bay, which you see all the big spires sticking out and the boats
Mm-hmm.
going. Ha Long Bay is probably worth going to. Our favorite place was Hoi An. It's in the middle of the country and it's a beach community and that's really cool. And then Ho Chi Minh is kind of like almost any big, it could be Singapore, it could be Tokyo, big Asian bustling modern city. Culturally it's not different from most cities.
Okay. All right. Okay. Well, I'll keep researching on that. What book are you reading right now?
I am not reading a book. I'm reading a book about I'm not going to say I'm reading it right now. It probably has been a few weeks since I picked it up, but I'm reading a book on Creoles of Louisiana. I don't remember the title, but
Okay.
it's all about like, Creole heritage down here in New Orleans. We're not really Cajun people, we're Creole people. We came up through the Caribbean, not descending down from the north. And it kind of tells the story of like Creoles in New Orleans, etc.
That's cool. If you're still in the middle of it, you're still technically reading it right now. It just may
Okay,
be
fair
on your
enough. I
shelf a
am in
little
the
bit.
middle.
What's a book you've read in the past 12 to 18 months that you would highly recommend to others?
That I've read one in the last 12 to 18 months other than this.
You're like,
I'm
I'm
more of an
heads
online
down in
reader.
building this business. And
Yeah,
so
exactly.
fair. Okay. Well, if people want to connect with you, Mike, where's the best place to kind of follow you or connect with you?
Well, LinkedIn is always really good. I'm on LinkedIn. I'm pretty active on there, and anybody's always welcome to reach out to me at locally.com. Just send a note, mike.massey@locally.com. Hit me up at Massey's. I'm still there 3 days a week. So keep an eye on what's going on. Don't really have an active role anymore, but I love talking to people about retail and shoppers and shopper behavior, etc.
Well, it's due time that I need another trip down to the bayou, so maybe I'll have
Come
to come
on.
and
I know
swing in
where
the shops.
there's some good food for you waiting.
Fantastic. Well, Mike, it was a pleasure. I appreciate you taking some time to join us again on a bit of curiosity. Thank you so much. It was a great conversation. Yeah.
Thanks a ton, Jeremy. It's great being here. I really appreciate it.
Pleasure.